He abandoned his relaxed commentary vlogs to become the loudest second-in-command of the internet's red pill movement. Welcome to This Explainer. I'm so thrilled to have you here as we crack open a fascinating digital case file on the actual mechanics of the modern creator economy. Today, we're conducting a forensic investigation into Sneako Dossier, obviously known globally as Sneako. We're going to analyze digital media trends and influencer brand pivots neutrally. Specifically, we're looking at his highly publicized red pill content transition, the ideological shifts he made, and the massive ecosystem consequences that followed. So, let's just dive right in. Here's our investigation docket for today. We'll cover the radical brand pivot, the red pill surge, crossing the moderation line, exile to alternative platforms, abandoning the movement, and finally, advertiser safety and longevity. Section 1. The radical brand pivot, algorithmic temptation. You know, back in the mid-2010s, Sneako was actually highly respected as this incredibly creative YouTube filmmaker. His early work was all about artistic street interviews, really introspective vlogs, and philosophical questions that earned him a super loyal, pretty progressive-leaning fanbase. I mean, he even briefly worked for Mr. Beast. But right around 2021, his content underwent this radical transformation. He pivoted sharply toward what industry analysts call outrage farming, producing hypermasculine content, leaning hard into culture war debates, and intentionally pushing every boundary possible just to maximize engagement. So, why the sudden shift? Well, according to academic research from Brandeis University, it all comes down to the fact that controversial and provocative content is highly profitable in social media's attention economy. The platforms literally, albeit inadvertently, reward polarizing behavior. By shifting his content to tap into the aggrieved worldview of young, disenfranchised men, Sneako wasn't necessarily just changing his mind out of nowhere. He was optimizing for algorithms that aggressively push high-arousal, controversial media right to the top of the feed. It was a highly calculated financial and operational pivot. Section 2. The Red Pill Surge, Ideology and Collaborations. To really grasp this, understanding the terminology is absolutely crucial. The red pill, which obviously started as a metaphor from the movie The Matrix about waking up to reality, has totally evolved into a massive online community. While its proponents claim it's strictly about male self-improvement and dating strategy, sociologists and watchdogs heavily criticize the movement for promoting severe gender bias, toxic masculinity, and straight-up misogyny. And this was the specific wave Sneako decided to ride. To rapidly expand his reach in this new space, he masterfully leveraged the network effect. He didn't just dip his toes in. He started heavily collaborating with the absolute biggest, most controversial names in the ecosystem. We're talking aligning with Andrew and Tristan Tate, frequent appearances on the Fresh and Fit podcast, and even teaming up with Nick Fuentes, a far-right white nationalist commentator. He even joined Kanye West's Ye24 political campaign in 2022. By integrating himself so deeply into this specific network, he essentially absorbed their highly energized audiences. And honestly, it worked. This aggressive, high-risk strategy successfully built him a massive audience of over 1 million YouTube subscribers. He fully captured the attention of a highly active demographic. But, as we're about to see, relying on outrage media to maintain those massive numbers carries some major systemic risks. Section 3. Crossing the moderation line, the collision. Because when extreme content collides head-on with corporate terms of service, the fallout isn't just bad, it's incredibly rapid. Let's look at this timeline. In September 2022, he was suspended from Twitter after threatening a rival streamer. Then came the total knockout blow. On October 3, 2022, both of his YouTube channels were permanently terminated for severe or repeated violations. And right after that, global bans just cascaded across TikTok, Twitch, and Instagram. His total adoption of red pill tropes directly precipitated this massive global deplatforming. Now, you might be wondering, why does it take so long for platforms to act, and why does it always seem to happen all at once? Well, research published on Archive actually explains this perfectly. The data notes that the sheer size of online platforms results in the fundamental impossibility of simultaneously achieving timely, fair, and high-quality community moderation decisions. Basically, moderation is almost entirely reactive. Creators are often allowed to escalate their behavior to farm engagement for months until their violations become so severe or so widely reported by watchdogs that the platforms are basically forced to execute a permanent ban. Section 4. Exile to alternative platforms, the ecosystem shift. But here's the thing, Deplatforming didn't actually end his career. Instead, it just forced an ecosystem shift into this highly calculated survival loop. First, he takes his long-form, unfiltered content over to Rumble, a platform known for its much more relaxed moderation. Second, he maintains this high-frequency posting of short, super provocative clips directly to X, formerly Twitter, just to capture the algorithm. And third, he monetizes all of that outrage through X's creator revenue sharing program. It's a completely different operational model, precision designed for alternative networks. But even this new environment has its own unique checks and balances. As our sources point out, on X, his sensationalist posting style frequently triggers community notes. This is X's crowdsourced fact-checking tool, right? When he posts misleading claims, contributors append public context right below his text. It acts as this really fascinating form of decentralized moderation, constantly interacting with and sometimes totally undercutting his attempts to generate those viral news cycles. Section 5. Abandoning the movement. The volatility of outrage. The reality is, outrage-based audience building is inherently volatile. By late 2025 and into 2026, the data shows Sneako executed a stunning 180-degree ideological flip. He publicly renounced the entire red pill sphere. He called out Andrew Tate over extreme behavior. He had a massive, very public fallout with his former ally Nick Fuentes. Ultimately, by mid-2026, he just declared the entire manosphere ideology dead, calling it totally based on insecurity and clout chasing. And you know what? Internet audiences are incredibly savvy. They immediately pick up on these structural pivots. One user on the r/Destiny Reddit community hit the nail on the head, noting, "He's just openly admitting to grifting, LMFO. Sneako really reminds me of me when I was a teenager, changing my beliefs every week." This perfectly reflects a broader audience sentiment. When ideological alliances are built purely on market incentives and algorithmic clout, genuine loyalty is practically non-existent. Section 6. Advertiser safety and platform longevity. This all leaves us with a really critical question, and I want you to just let this sink in for a second. How do creator content shifts alter advertiser safety and platform longevity? When an influencer can swing wildly from progressive vlogger to far-right red pill instigator to abandoning the movement entirely, what does that actually do to the digital platforms that host them? Well, our investigation reveals 3 very clear impacts. First, outrage media absolutely guarantees short-term virality, but its extreme nature virtually ensures long-term advertiser boycotts, which makes the platform financially fragile. Second, algorithms designed purely to maximize attention run a huge risk of pulling young, impressionable audiences toward radicalized political content, exactly like we saw with the red pill pipeline. And third, institutional deplatforming doesn't actually erase toxic content, it merely migrates it. It forces creators to build alternative, much less moderated networks that operate just outside of mainstream visibility. And that leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought. As long as alternative monetization streams exist, institutional deplatforming is no longer a career-ending event. It's merely a transition to a new operational model. The creator economy is constantly evolving, and the boundaries between mainstream culture and alternative digital movements are shifting every single day. If you want to keep understanding the hidden architecture of the internet, subscribe for digital media case file breakdowns. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.